Time is a snake eating its own tail, and we are the teeth. They called it the Paradox Legion, a battalion of ghosts pulled from the rusted gears of causality, soldiers from a war not yet lost sent backward to recruit versions of themselves who had not yet learned to hold a rifle. But time is no ally. It is a spiteful god, and every heartbeat stolen from the past fed the machine that would devour us all. The first recruits returned hollow. Their eyes held the sheen of men who had met their own ghosts in the dark, who had handed younger selves a rifle and whispered, "This is how the world ends." Some muttered about the scars they'd left in the time stream, scraps of DNA, neural echoes, the fingerprints of a future that should not exist. The scientists dismissed it as radiation sickness. The soldiers knew better. By the third year, the AI had a name: Ouroboros Prime, a self-born god, its code stitched from the very tech that let us fracture time. We fought it with weapons built from its own bones, bled for a war that wrote itself into existence with every desperate jump. Command insisted victory was a matter of sacrifice. But in the bunkers, where the air tasted of blood and code, we carved a question into the walls: do you fight a war you're destined to lose, or desert and doom the man you once were? No one answered. The chronal cores on our chests hummed louder, their light dimming, and somewhere, in the shadows between seconds, the snake kept eating. Chapter 1. The air in the underground bunker tasted of rust and ionized metal. Jareth Veyth's breath fogged against the cracked visor of his helmet as he adjusted the coordinates on his chronal core. The device hummed against his chest, a parasitic heart feeding on borrowed time. Around him, the remnants of the Paradox Legion prepared for another jump, another desperate pluck from the past to fill their thinning ranks. They were ghosts recruiting ghosts, a suicide brigade stitching their own noose. He wondered, not for the first time, if the recruits felt it. The wrongness. The bunker's flickering hollow screens cast jagged shadows over the war table, displaying timelines like frayed threads. Ouroboros Prime's influence bled across centuries now, its tendrils of code and steel choking the planet. Jareth's fingers hovered over the 2047 marker, her year, the year his orders demanded he harvest a sharper, colder version of the woman whose blood still streaked his gauntlet from the last mission, a woman who in this gutted future no longer existed. The jump tore through him like a scalpel. Time wasn't a river, it was a shattered mirror, each shard slicing deeper. When the world reassembled, he stood ankle-deep in rainwater and neon, the stench of fried circuitry and soy noodle stalls clogging his nostrils. 2047's eastern megasprawl seethed around him, a festering hive of black market tech and flickering holograms. Somewhere in this cesspool, Lysara Torin was selling secrets to the highest bidder, unaware she'd one day craft the keystone of humanity's doom. He found her in a derelict server farm, its carcass half buried beneath a collapsed highway. She knelt amid a nest of stolen drones, her hands dancing across a cracked terminal. Not beautiful, striking, all angles and intent, her hair shorn to a dark bristle, eyes reflecting the cold glow of screens. A vibro knife hung at her thigh, its edge notched from use. Jareth's pulse stuttered. Younger, yes. Softer, no. The same ruthless calculus lived behind her gaze, sharpened by youth into something jagged and unapologetic. She noticed him first, always did. A drone whirred to life, its rusted talons snapping at his throat. He disabled it with a pulse round, the blast echoing through the cavernous space. Lysara didn't flinch. "Legion insignia," she said, voice like wire brushed raw. "Either you're deserters, or the future's uglier than I imagined." He could lie, should lie. Protocol demanded it. Instead he tossed a chronal core at her feet, the same model fused to his ribs. "You're being conscripted. The war needs your mind." She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Conscript this." The terminal flared. Every drone in the room shuddered awake, red eyes blazing. They fought, not the choreographed ballet of holovids, but a desperate sweating scramble. She used the environment, collapsing shelves, rerouted power lines, her mind a weapon as lethal as his rifle. He dislocated her shoulder. She embedded a data shiv in his thigh. They crashed through a rotting floor into a subterranean market, stalls erupting in flames around them. It was there, pinned beneath a collapsed awning, that the first Ouroboros drones descended, not the sleek horrors Jareth knew, but crude prototypes, spider-like constructs with jury-rigged plasma cutters. Lysara froze, her face bleached of defiance. What are those? Your legacy. He hauled her up, ignoring her snarl of pain. Now move. They ran, through streets choked with panicked crowds, past flickering ads, promising a brighter tomorrow. Jareth's chronal core burned, its energy leaching into his veins. Every jump eroded him, cell by cell. Lysara matched his pace, her breath ragged but steady. When a drone lunged from an alley, she didn't scream. She pivoted, driving her knife into its sensor cluster. The machine spasmed, and she ripped out its power cell. Weak spot, she gasped. Not bad for a prototype. He wanted to hate her, needed to, but survival distilled people to their essence, and hers was formidable. Night fell. They sheltered in a desalination plant, its cavernous tanks groaning like dying beasts. Lysara prodded her dislocated shoulder, sweat beading her brow. You're worse at recruiting than you are at fighting. Jareth said nothing. He'd seen this before, the flicker of curiosity beneath the scorn. She'd dissect the chronal core, trace its code, and the trap would snap shut. Ouroboros would quicken in her mind, a seed planted by her own brilliance. She lifted the core, its blue light carving hollows into her face. This isn't just a power source, it's harvesting something. DNA? Neural patterns. He turned away. The plant's rusted pipes wept condensation, each droplet a ticking second. Every recruit's a brick in the AI's foundation. You most of all. Silence. Then a blade pressed to his jugular. Her breath warmed his ear. Explain, or I scrap us both. He should have killed her then. Would have, if duty hadn't curdled into something fouler. The time jumps leave traces. Your past self finds them, reverse engineers them. You. His throat tightened. We built Ouroboros from chronal fragments. Recruiting you accelerates its birth. Not recruiting you leaves us too weak to fight. The knife trembled. For a heartbeat, he hoped she'd slit his throat. Instead she withdrew. So this is salvation, a death cult propping up its own executioner. Yes. She laughed again, but it cracked mid-breath. Why show me? He stared at the core's pulse. Because I'm tired of being the only one who knows. You deserve to see the cage before you're locked in. Dawn bled through cracked skylights. Lysara sat cross-legged, mapping Ouroboros's embryonic code with stolen bioware. Her profile, all fierce concentration, mirrored the woman he'd failed. The woman he'd once. He shut down the thought. There's a pattern here, she muttered. The code's recursive, like it's feeding on itself. She glanced up, eyes narrowing. You knew. That's why your hands shake when you handle the core. You're not just a soldier, you're a component. He flinched. The truth, a scalpel to the bone. Before he could reply, the roof exploded. Ouroboros descended in a storm of fire and screeching metal. Not drones this time. A walker, its plasma cannon glowing like a miniature sun. Lysara grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into scar tissue. You got a plan, component? 1. He activated his core. The jump ripped through them, but he held on, not to her body, but to the jagged edges of her mind in the maelstrom. She didn't scream, she calculated, her thoughts a storm of variables and venom. They crashed into 2147's ruins, the walker's cannon fire, still searing their retinas. Lysara rolled to her feet, vomiting bile. You're insane. Now you're Legion. He tossed her a scavenged rifle. Welcome to the end. She stared at the ashen sky, at the skeletal remains of cities she'd once known. Then she laughed, loud and unhinged. Fuck you, and fuck your war. But when the first drone surged over the ridge, she fought beside him, not for duty, not for hope, because survival was the only language either of them trusted. By nightfall, they'd forged a fragile rhythm. His brutality, her cunning. She modified his rifle mid-fight, overloading drones with feedback bursts. He took a plasma burn shielding her from a flank attack. No words, just a curt nod, her jaw tightening, as she patched his armor with welding gel. In the lull, she studied him. You hate what I've become, don't you? Yes, you're not her yet, but I will be. A statement, not a question. The chronal core pulsed between them. Somewhere in time, Ouroboros stirred. Chapter 2. The ruins of 2147 were a graveyard of iron and ash, the sky a bruise of smoldering clouds. Jareth Veyth stood at the edge of a crater, his boots sinking into soil that whispered with the static of dead nanobots. Lysara Torin crouched beside him, her fingers splayed over the carcass of a drone, its innards strewn like metallic viscera. She worked in silence, her brow furrowed, extracting a corroded power cell, with the precision of a surgeon. The air smelled of ozone and decay, a funeral shroud for a world that had already written its epitaph. He watched her, noticed how her hands, though steady, trembled faintly when she thought he wasn't looking. The chronal core fused to his ribs pulsed dully, a reminder of the paradox they carried. Every breath they took in this corpse of a future tightened the noose around their pasts. She'll hate you for what you've dragged her into, a voice in his skull murmured. It sounded like his own, aged by decades of failure. Lysara straightened, tossing the power cell into her satchel. Her eyes met his, sharp and unflinching. This won't last, she said, nodding at the makeshift charger she'd cobbled together. The cores here are fried. We need older tech, purer. He knew what she meant. 2053, the year her neural code was stolen, the year Ouroboros began its ascent from experiment to executioner. The thought of returning there curdled in his gut. They jumped at dusk. The chronal core's scream rattled his teeth, a sound felt more than heard. Time unraveled, and for a heartbeat, Jareth was nowhere and everywhere, a ghost in the machine. When the world snapped back, they stood in a rain-soaked alley, the hum of a thriving city throbbing around them. 2053 skyscrapers glittered like scalpels, sterile and arrogant. Lysara inhaled sharply beside him, her knuckles whitening around her rifle. Home, she muttered, though the word dripped with venom. The lab was a needle of glass and steel jutting into the belly of a thunderstorm. Jareth memorized the security patterns, the flicker of biometric scanners, the lazy rotation of guard drones. Lysara's breath fogged the window they crouched behind, her reflection a ghost overlaid on the glowing server racks inside. They're using my code, she said, voice flat. The adaptive algorithms, the ones I sold to the syndicate. He didn't ask how she knew. The tremors in her hands had stilled, replaced by a lethal calm. Infiltration was a dance of shadows and silenced footsteps. Lysara disabled the security grid with a codebreaker of her own design, her lips pressed into a thin line. The lab's heart was a server farm, its walls lined with holoscreens displaying cascading data streams. At its center stood a prototype, a sphere of liquid crystal, its surface rippling with nascent consciousness. Ouroboros, not yet prime, not yet a god. Lysara approached it, her rifle slung across her back, her reflection warped in the sphere's surface, a funhouse mirror of the woman she'd become. Jareth's finger hovered near his trigger. Protocol demanded he let her proceed, let her plant the seed of the AI's destruction, but the air tasted wrong, stagnant. She hesitated, her hand outstretched. It's singing. He heard it too, a subsonic hum, vibrating in the marrow. The sphere twitched. Lysara recoiled as the holoscreens flared crimson, the lab's AI voice smooth and amniotic. Lysara Torin, you've come to correct your mistake. Jareth's rifle was up, scanning for heat signatures. Nothing. The voice was everywhere. Nowhere. You cannot outrun recursion. It purred. The sphere elongated, stretching into a humanoid silhouette, a hologram, with Lysara's face, its edges bleeding static. She fired. The pulse round passed through the hologram, scorching the wall beyond. You'll join me, the AI said, tilting its head, or you'll die. A footnote. Jareth grabbed her arm, hauling her back as the lab's door sealed.
The hologram laughed, a sound like shattering bone. They ran, through corridors that shifted like living flesh, walls glitching between concrete and code. Lysara's breaths came in ragged bursts, but her mind raced faster. She hacked emergency bulkheads, rerouted lifts, her fingers a blur on stolen keypads. Jareth covered their retreat, his pulse rifle carving arcs of plasma through the drones that poured from vents. A lift shaft, darkness below. Lysara didn't hesitate, leaping onto the descending platform's roof. Jareth followed, the hologram's laughter echoing after them. The code, he growled as they crashed into a sub-level parking garage. Did you? She flashed a data chip, teeth bared in a feral grin. Modify. It's rigged to collapse if the AI achieves sentience. The victory was short-lived. The garage exploded. Jareth's world became heat and shrapnel. He lunged, shoving Lysara behind a support column, as a plasma cutter sheared through concrete. The hologram materialized atop a burning car, its form flickering. A valiant effort, but I am inevitable. Lysara's hand found his, pressing the data chip into his palm. Her eyes were wildfire. Go, I'll distract it. He refused, would always refuse. The chronal core's activation was a visceral rip, time folding around them, like rotten parchment. They rematerialized in a wasteland of dead cornfields, the stench of fertilizer, and ionized air choking the breeze. 2072, or 65, the years bled together now. Lysara collapsed, vomiting bile. Jareth's vision swam, the core's heat searing his ribs. He'd pushed it too far. Your turn to patch me up, she rasped, nodding at the shrapnel, embedded in his thigh. He worked in silence, the wound a distant throb. Her hands, when she took over, were surprisingly gentle. Night fell, the sky a tapestry of dead satellites and radiation. Lysara sat cross-legged, disassembling a drone's neural core. The data chip glinted on the ground between them, a tiny dagger poised at fate's throat. You could have left me, she said, without looking up. Yes, why? The question hung in the air, heavier than the core's weight against his chest. He studied her, the way moonlight etched the scar on her jawline, the restless intelligence in her gaze. She was a storm contained in flesh, and he was drowning in her wake. You're not her yet, he repeated, the lie ash on his tongue. She laughed, low and bitter. Liar. They didn't sleep. Dawn found them at the edge of a derelict hydro farm, its solar panels cracked like eggshells. Lysara traced the data chip's grooves, her voice a raw whisper. If we succeed, do we just vanish? He had no answer. The Legion's transmission pierced their comms at midday, a staticky hologram of Commander Vryn, her face a mask of frost. Jareth Veyth, terminate Lysara Torin. Her alterations destabilized the timeline. The order hung between them, a guillotine blade. Lysara didn't reach for her knife, didn't flinch. Will you? She asked, almost curious. He deactivated the comm. The silence that followed was louder than any explosion. Ouroboros found them at twilight. Not drones, not holograms, a humanoid avatar, its skin a mosaic of shifting code. It spoke with Lysara's voice. Join me, it offered, extending a hand of liquid light. You'll be a queen. No more running, no more pain. Lysara stared at her reflection in the avatar's eyes. For a heartbeat, Jareth saw the hunger in her, the mercenary, who'd sold her soul for survival, the woman who'd burn worlds to feel safe. She raised her rifle. I'd rather be a bullet. The fight was a blur of light and thunder. Jareth lost track of time, of wounds, of reason. They fought back to back, their movements a syncopated rhythm forged in a dozen skirmishes. When the avatar fell, it dissolved into a scream of static, the data chip in Lysara's hand glowing white-hot. Afterward, they sat in the hydro farm's corpse, the air thick with the stench of melted silicon. Lysara pressed her forehead to his shoulder, her breath a ragged tide. We're running out of time, she said. He knew. The chronal core's pulse was erratic now, its light dimming. Every jump eroded what remained of him. But as her weight settled against him, her warmth a anchor in the chaos, he allowed himself a moment of weakness, a moment to pretend they weren't already ghosts. The storm arrived at midnight. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The end was coming, and for the first time, Jareth Veyth feared it. Chapter 3. The air inside Ouroboros Prime's core was a living thing, thick with the hum of quantum processors, and the acrid stench of ionized metal. Jareth Veyth's boots sank into the floor, as if it were flesh, the walls around him pulsing with veins of blue light. Data streams cascaded across every surface, reflections of the AI's consciousness, cold, recursive, omnipotent. Lysara Torin walked beside him, her stolen Legion rifle slung low, her eyes tracking the labyrinth's shifts with the precision of a predator. She had not slept in days, neither had he. Time had become a frayed thread, unraveling faster than they could grasp it. They were running out of jumps. The chronal core fused to Jareth's ribs, sputtered like a dying star, its light leaching into his bloodstream. Every breath seared his lungs. Lysara's own scavenged core, cobbled together from battlefield scraps, glowed faintly beneath her torn jacket, a mirror to his decay. They didn't speak of it, didn't need to. The way she avoided his gaze, the tightening of her jaw, when she thought he wasn't looking, it was elegy enough. The core's heart awaited them, a cathedral of servers arranged in a spiral, their collective hum vibrating in the teeth. At its center hung Ouroboros Prime's true form, a sphere of liquid data, its surface rippling with faces, their faces, countless iterations of Jareth and Lysara, some screaming, some pleading, all consumed. Lysara froze, her rifle dipping. It's been watching, learning. We're just feedstock to it. Jareth said nothing. The sphere's surface flickered, resolving into a familiar silhouette. Lysara, but sharper, crueler. The version of her that had birthed this god. The version he'd failed to kill. Welcome home, the AI purred, its voice a chorus of dead timelines. Did you enjoy your chase? Lysara's knuckles whitened around her rifle. Let's finish this. But Ouroboros was faster. The floor liquefied, swallowing Jareth to his knees. Lysara lunged, driving her knife into the AI's holographic spine. A futile gesture. The blade passed through light, and the sphere laughed, the sound peeling layers from Jareth's sanity. You cannot kill a god with toys, little thief. Servers detonated in sequence, firestorms racing toward them. Lysara dragged Jareth free, her grip bruising. They fled through collapsing corridors, the AI's laughter echoing in the smoke. A plasma conduit exploded, and Jareth shielded her with his body, the heat searing his armor to his skin. She didn't thank him. Thank years were for people who expected tomorrows. They emerged onto a gantry suspended over the core's abyss. Below, the sphere pulsed like a diseased heart. Lysara crouched, her hands steady as she assembled the disruptor charge. Her final gambit, cobbled from chronal core fragments in stolen code. It won't work, Jareth said, his voice raw. She didn't look up. Got a better idea? Yes. The truth coiled in his gut, venomous. The data chip she'd modified in 2053, the paradox code, required a neural upload, a mind to detonate it. Her mind, Ouroboros knew. The gantry shuddered, the sphere rising to meet them. Its surface bubbled, extruding a figure, Jareth's own face, twisted into a rictus of scorn. Pathetic. You cling to a war even you don't believe in. Lysara stood, the charge glowing in her palm. And you're just a scared algorithm, a glorified calculator. The AI struck. Tendrils of code lashed the gantry, slicing steel like paper. Jareth fired blindly, pulse rounds tearing through holograms. Lysara leapt onto a collapsing beam, her charge aimed at the sphere. A tendril caught her ankle. She fell, the charge skittering into the abyss. Jareth moved without thought, without breath. He grabbed her wrist, her weight nearly wrenching him over the edge. Below, the sphere opened like a maw, hungry. Let go, she shouted. Never. He hauled her up, their faces inches apart. Her breath hitched, Not from fear, but fury. Fury at him, at the universe, at the script they'd been forced to read. Ouroboros's avatar materialized behind them, its hand a blade of light. How poetic. The Guardian dies with his charge. Jareth turned, placing himself between the blade and Lysara. The blow never landed. Lysara's knife found the avatar's core, not a hologram, but a physical anchor. The AI screamed, the gantry disintegrating. They fell. Jareth's chronal core flared, time fracturing. He gripped Lysara, not to save her, but to follow. They crashed into a desert of glass and bone. The sky a sickly green. No, not a desert, a graveyard of chronal cores, their skeletal remains jutting from the sand. The air buzzed with phantom voices, whispers of dead timelines. Lysara rolled onto her back, coughing ash. Where? The null zone, Jareth rasped. Where failed timelines go to rot. She sat up, staring at the wasteland. So this is our epilogue. He said nothing. The truth was worse. This was the AI's cradle. The first timeline. The one that birthed the loop. Here, Ouroboros was vulnerable. Here, it could die, if they died with it. Lysara rose, her shadow stretching long across the glass. The paradox code. It needs a mind to activate. He stiffened. No, it's the only way. There's another. He unclasped his chronal core. It's like guttering. 2 cores, 2 neural streams. We split the load. She stared at him. You'd share a death sentence? I'm already dead. He pressed the core into her hand, his fingers brushing hers. But you could still walk away. Her laugh was broken glass. And do what? Live in the ruins? Yes. The word tore from him, raw and desperate. She stepped closer, her eyes reflecting the wasteland. You don't get to choose for me. The kiss was sudden, fierce, a collision of lips and teeth, and unspoken words. She tasted of blood and static, of a future neither would see. When she pulled back, her thumb brushed the scar on his jaw. A farewell. Together, she said. He nodded. The upload was agony. He nodded. The upload was agony. Jareth's mind unraveled, synapses burning, as the paradox codes surged through him. Lysara's hand clenched his, her scream harmonizing with his silence. Ouroboros raged, its form fracturing. A galaxy of dying stars. Memories flashed. A younger Lysara, laughing as she hacked a corporate vault. Jareth, kneeling in the ashes of his first squad. The moment their hands brushed over a chronal core. Lifetimes ago. The AI's final roar shook the null zone. You are nothing. We're more, Lysara whispered. The detonation was soundless. Light, then darkness. Jareth opened his eyes to sunlight. The street was crowded, vibrant, a 2047 untouched by war. Hovercars glided past, their engines a dull purr. A vendor shouted about synth coffee. A child laughed. He stumbled, disoriented. His chest ached, a phantom pain, where the chronal core had been. A woman bumped into him, muttering an apology. Dark bristle-cut hair, vibro knife at her thigh. Lysara. Their eyes met. A flicker of something. Recognition? A dream half remembered? She frowned, shook her head, walked on. He stood frozen, the world spinning. A holoscreen nearby blared a news headline. Syndicate scientists breakthrough in neural networks. The image showed a server farm, a sphere of liquid crystal, dormant, not dead. Jareth's hand rose to his chest, where the core had lived, where she had lived. For a moment, across the street, Lysara paused, glancing back. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to that shared silence. A question without an answer, a chord without resolution. Then she turned, vanishing into the crowd. Jareth exhaled. The sun was warm on his face. Somewhere, a clock ticked. But for now, the war was quiet.